Hi everyone, this is Etien, and today we're going to talk about emotionally intelligent technology, personal transformation, and one very exciting new book. We have a rather unique guest in place, Rana el Kaliouby. She is a computer scientist, entrepreneur, one of the pioneers in the field of emotion AI. But I think one of the most interesting things about her is that she has defied so many social norms, even more than the average startup founder. Growing up in Egypt and Kuwait, Rana was raised by a conservative father who valued tradition and a mother who was one of the first female computer programmers in the Middle East. And even before she broke ground as a scientist, she broke the rules of what it meant to be an obedient daughter in order to go after her own dreams. After earning her PhD in Cambridge in 2005, Rana, who is now the divorced mother of two, moved to the United States to pursue her mission to humanize technology. She spent about 2 years as a researcher at the MIT Media Lab, where she explored how emotion measurement technology can be used to understand how people engage with products. Ultimately, her research resulted in a startup spin-off as she co-founded Factiva, a company that aims to bring emotional intelligence to our devices and digital experiences. In the past 10 years, Factiva's team has developed facial and vocal emotion AI platforms that have been deployed in a number of verticals, from conversational interfaces through advertising research to automotive and road safety. And if this wasn't enough, just now Rana is releasing a memoir book, Grow Decoded, in which she shares the story of her life journey from a shy Egyptian girl to someone who is at the forefront of technological innovation. I can spend all day introducing her, but I think it's about time I give her an opportunity to say something. So, hi Rana, thanks for being with us here today. And I know you're super busy between the book release, being a CEO, a mother. How do you manage to find a balance between all this?
First of all, thank you for having me. Very excited to do this. Yeah, balancing is hard, right? I actually I don't believe in finding 100% balance, but I like to call it blending. I really just think it's a matter of integrating all aspects of things that you really care about in your life and creating time for it. I found that I have to really work hard to make sure that there's time for the things that are important, including, self-care, like exercising, sleeping, eating well, things like that.
I'll start with an easy question. At what point in your life did you decide it's okay to break the rules, that you want to forge your own path, even if it's different from what everyone else expects from you?
That's an easy question. Come on. That's going to be a hard interview. Um, um, I really think I wasn't a rebellious kid, right? Like I was a very kind of sensible, reliable, like hardworking, no rule breaking girl growing up. And I think when I got to my PhD at Cambridge University and I started to get really passionate about building emotional intelligence into our technology, that's when um, I don't know, that's when I was just really driven by this mission and this passion. And that's when I started to break the rules.
You've been studying and working on emotionally intelligent machines for almost 20 years. What inspires you so much about this topic?
Two things. First, a lot of how, AI and technology is now taking on new roles in our societies, things that were traditionally done by people. So we spend hours and hours interfacing with our devices. And I realized 20 years ago when I first got to Cambridge University that I was spending so much time with my computer and my computer had no clue how I was feeling. So that made me feel like, what if computers could understand human emotions just like we do? More importantly, and this has been a thread in my work and my career throughout, technology is often kind of a mediator for human to human communication, right? So we use devices and technology to communicate with one another. And I believe if these devices have no emotional intelligence, then the way we communicate also has no emotions and no emotional intelligence. So, back in Cambridge, when I was communicating with my family back home, I often felt like all of the richness of my facial expressions and my vocal intonations and my gestures, like all of that disappeared in cyberspace. And I wanted to change that. And I think it's especially important now in the times of social distancing. I don't know how you guys are doing it in Bulgaria. Are you social distancing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We prefer the term physical distancing. We're still trying to stay in touch with each
So,
other.
yeah, physical distancing is a much better word. I agree with you. Because in this world of physical distancing, we still want to feel connected, right? We want to feel connected more than ever. And I think this is a place where the technology I've been working on can be really relevant and helpful.
Yeah, I think the past few months have been quite stressful for probably all of us. Like, what tactics do you personally use to deal with anxiety and negative emotions? And maybe can Affectiva's software can be somehow used in the
So first of all, I agree with you. It is a time of anxiety, and it's a challenging time for everybody, right? Um, the top most priority I tell my team is to stay healthy and safe, right? So that's number one. Number two is to then hopefully be empathetic and stay connected with your community and step up as a leader. What I've been doing is, first of all, I journal a lot. I use an app called Day One, which is available on the App Store. And it's just wonderful because sometimes I'll journal a lot, sometimes I'll journal just one sentence, and it's nice because you can go back and look at these really challenging times and see how you coped. And it's my way of kind of sharing my emotions very openly, so I recommend that. The other thing I try to do is I try to get a little bit of exercise in every day. I love doing Zumba dancing. And so I've been trying to do some virtual Zumba classes, which is not the same, but it's still fun. So I try to sneak those in, here and there. And then I ride a bike, sometimes outside if the weather's nice and sometimes inside. So I think really making time for these things that can help both our physical wellness, but also more importantly, our mental wellness is really important. And then to the second part of your question, how can Affectiva's technologies help with this? We know that there are facial manifestations of things like depression and, even things like Parkinson's or autism or suicidal intent. So I really believe that if we're able to capture this data as we're on our devices anyways, we can build a baseline for the individual. And then as you deviate from that baseline, if you have a really bad day or if there's a pattern of like a week where you're clearly depressed, I think it would be amazing if the technology could flag that to you, show you the data, or to even a doctor or a physician, or a friend, with your consent, of course.
These are some awesome tips. And right now you're releasing your memoir book, Grow Decoded, which is a very cool name, by the way.
Thank you.
You share the story of your personal transformation as you follow your personal mission to humanize technology and how we connect with one another. But who did you write this book for? Who should read it or listen to it? I heard that there's also an audio version that you narrated yourself.
Yeah, so the audio version, I had no idea what I was getting into. They asked me if I wanted an actor to narrate it or if I would do it. And I just thought it was so personal that I should do it. So I signed up to do it. And it took about 6 days of recording 8 hours every single day. I had to drink so much tea. I had so much hot tea in my life. So that was, and then you're stuck in a small recording studio, right? That you don't see anybody else. So that was definitely an interesting journey and experience. But hopefully the listeners will enjoy it. I wrote the book because two reasons. First, I really believe that the public should be involved in our discussion and in the dialogue around how technology should look like in the future. And we need everybody around the table to, to advance this mission of human-centric technology that serves us in our society, especially as we start to see more and more of these AI systems being deployed, at scale. But then as I started to write the book, I realized that my unusual path, growing up in the Middle East, finding my way to the UK and then the US, going from academia to industry, spinning out of MIT, starting a company, being a CEO, like all of these experiences, I felt there's a lot of underlying universal themes. How do you combat the doubting voice in your head? How do you support yourself with, I believe it takes a village to get anything done. So how do you do that? So I decided to write it as a memoir, so that I broadened the reach of the book and the audience. So I feel like the people who will resonate, the readers who will resonate the book are people who are interested in technology and the future of technology, especially ethics, right? And then people who are just on their own path and want to, are dreaming big and, they need to break out of the societal and cultural norms. Hopefully they'll read it and be inspired and go do amazing things.
You mentioned overcoming self-doubt, and I believe that's a very important topic for everyone who wants to do tech and innovation. Like, do you have any advice? Where does how do you start the process of overcoming self-doubt? Let's put it that way.
In my case, I found that, again, two things. First, the voice never goes away, and even now, right? We're recording this, and there's 4 days to go before the book launch, and I have so much doubt in my head. Even though people have read, the early readers loved the book, and people are sharing about the book, and I'm being interviewed about the book, I still have this voice in my head that nobody's going to read this book, and it's going to be a colossal failure, right? So I think the way to do that, to manage that, is to just kind of acknowledge the voice. And that's where journaling is really helpful. I often write down these doubts. My journal has a lot of the word fear and a lot of, you can't do this. That's surreal, right? A lot of these words. So getting it out is helpful. I've also found that supporting yourself with a few cheerleaders or mentors is really helpful. Because when I have these doubts, I can go to them and say, hey, I'm really concerned about X, Y, and Z. And if they're great mentors, they will acknowledge that and work through it with you. So I think mentors are really critical. And then the last thing is celebrate success. Always look back and remember the points in your life where things were tough, but you overcame it. Right? And we all have these experiences, and just kind of celebrate those. So that I find that gives me strength too.
Was there anything new you learned about yourself while writing Decoded?
Yes. I kind of learned, and I guess I kind of knew that, but in writing the book, it really became obvious. Even though I'm an emotion expert, right? And I spent so much of my life researching emotions and building computers or teaching computers how to read emotions, I kind of realized that I've been, what's the word? Really ignoring burying my emotions deep and not really expressing them, and not really giving myself permission to feel them, especially if they're negative emotions. So I feel like I've learned to embrace my emotions a lot more, and I believe embrace them to myself, but also talk about them openly with others, and being vulnerable. And I found that in being vulnerable, people just resonate so much, and it's just resulted in a lot more authentic connections with people around me.
Can you maybe share a bit more about how your vision for the book evolved between the moment you started and the moment you wrote the final words?
Oh my goodness. So this has been 3 years in the making. I actually never really thought that I'd write a book, but I got approached by my co-author, Carol Coleman, and I had known her for years through MIT, and then we reconnected, and she said, I think this was in 2016, she was like, you really need to write a book. And I was like, I don't have anything to say to anyone. She was like, no, we should write a book about emotion AI. So the book originally was going to be about the applications, like why do computers need emotional intelligence, and what are the applications and the ethical and moral implications of the technology. So then we were pitching it to a publisher, Penguin Random House, and I had lunch with the editor, Roger Scholl. And he said, he started the lunch like this. He said, listen, I get pitched AI books every day. I'm not taking on any more AI books. So I just wanted to let you know before you have high expectations. I was like, great, that's, that's not going to be a productive lunch. And so he said, just tell me your story. Like, how did you go, right? Like he was like asking questions like the ones you're asking, like, how did you stumble upon emotion AI? And I just started telling him my story. I grew up in Egypt and Kuwait, and then, went to Cambridge and then MIT. And he was like, that's the book. So we pivoted just in the way startups do, right? We pivoted to this memoir and this juxtaposition of my personal journey, as well as how do you build technology that is human-centric, and how do you start a company? So it's like this kind of interweaving of these two stories. And as I, towards I would say maybe as I was a third into writing the book, I read Michelle Obama's memoir, Becoming. I was on a plane. I remember this very clearly. I was on a plane and I was kind of reading the book, and I was so engrossed in it. And she wrote so openly that I decided to go back and kind of rewrote the book with a lot more openness. So I share like very, very personal details about my struggles. And I hope that makes it just more authentic and connects with people in a stronger way.
Let's go a bit further back in your personal journey. Like, you are a computer scientist, and then you co-founded a startup. Why did you transition from academia to entrepreneurship?
Again, it was not part of the dream. My dream was to become faculty at a top university, right? And that was what was originally driving, my kind of career goal to get a PhD. When I got to MIT Media Lab, the Media Lab at MIT has very close kind of relationships with Fortune 500 companies and other companies around the world. And twice a year, we had what we called Sponsor Week. So we would invite all the companies, and it was show and tell, or actually it was called demo or die. You had to show a demo of your prototype or your technology. So for between 2006 and 2009, all these companies twice a year would come to the lab, and I would show a demo of this kind of facial analysis technology and its application. At the time, it was mostly to autism. And these companies like Toyota wanted to use it in their cars. Procter & Gamble wanted to use it to test their new products. Bank of America wanted to assess customer experience. And so I kept a list of all of these different use cases. And eventually we just realized that we had a really amazing commercial opportunity to bring this technology to the world. And so that was really kind of, for me, the tipping point for starting Factiva was realizing that this technology can do so much good if we are able to bring it to the world globally at scale.
You actually didn't start as a CEO. You transitioned to this role later. How did that happen? I think it would be an interesting story for our audience.
So when we spun out of MIT, my co-founder is an MIT professor, and so she never left MIT. And so we were pitching investors, and we were getting a lot of feedback that the two of us didn't have any business experience. So we hired a seasoned business executive to run the company as CEO, and I was the chief technology and science officer. And we did that for the first 4 or 5 years of the company. And then he decided to move on. So the next obvious question was, okay, who should be the next CEO? And several of our investors said, well, Rana should, because she knows the technology. She started the company. And I was so, again, like back to the voice in my head, I was just so scared to do it, to take on the role. I just felt like I'd never been CEO before. I was so scared of taking that role, and then the company fails. So I didn't raise my hands. At the same time, our head of sales at the time, Nick, he said, I'll do it, even though he also had never been CEO before. So he became the CEO for a couple of years. And then right after my TED Talk, I came back into the office and it hit me, right? I realized, oh my goodness, I am already doing the job. I'm the face of the company. I am the kind of the pioneer of this field. I know the technology. It's my baby, right? I'm so passionate about it. I raised over $50 million of funding for the company. And so I took all the courage I had and basically made the case to step into the CEO role, which I did about 4 years ago. So it's been one, I repositioned the company, and we entered new markets, and we grew the team. So I feel very lucky to be working with an amazing team like Factiva's team. But it was definitely, I definitely had to overcome a lot of self-doubt to get there.
Do you think emotional intelligence is helping you be a good CEO? Like, maybe can you give a concrete example of sometimes when EQ helped you, I don't know, raise VC money, attract a client, or achieve any important business goal?
Yeah, I really think my leadership style is very kind of based and rooted in emotional intelligence. So I like to say I lead with empathy first, and then, get stuff done. So I'll give a few examples. So again, we're recording this during COVID. We're all at home, a lot of stress and anxiety, and a lot of challenges, both kind of economic and global, like challenges all over the place, right? So I have encouraged my team, and I role model that. I start every meeting by just checking in with how people are doing. Like, how are you feeling? And we go around the table and we just share very openly how it feels like working from home. I have 2 kids, and we're hosting another 2 kids at home. And so we have, there's 5 of us in the house, and it's chaotic, right? So I try to encourage people to really be open about how they're feeling. And I try to remind everybody that don't just go about what you're seeing on a Zoom call, because you don't really know what's happening, broadly, right? Like the Zoom call, everybody may look fine, but you don't know what's happening behind the scenes. So leading with empathy is definitely true for me. With investors and partners, I've found that humanizing these people really matters. Like, when we're working with an automotive company, and there's one person there who is kind of advocating for Factiva's technology, and he or she are saying, oh, we got to incorporate that in the next kind of, vehicle design. That person is putting their career on the line for us, right? And so I just, again, try to tell my team, remember that this person is a human being, and he or she, they have career goals of themselves. They have challenges. And so we are very collaborative and very, we're all about this human connection. And it's true for how I connect with our investors, how I connect with my team, and how I connect with our clients. And I think it pays off.
In your opinion, what are the best and the worst parts about being a pioneer, a first mover in your industry?
That is an excellent question. So the good thing about being the first mover or the pioneer is that you define the terms, right? You kind of really build the whole vision, right? You paint a vision of this future, and you bring everybody else along. So we coined the term emotion AI. It didn't exist a few years ago. That was something we came up with. We defined what are the use cases and what are the applications. And we're on the forefront of the ethical conversation around all of that. So I love that because I feel like we have an opportunity, a unique opportunity to set the guidelines and best practices to make sure that this is done in the right way. So that's the good thing about being the first mover. I think what worries me about being the first mover is that now the table is set and it's a lot easier for competition to come in and build on all of what we've done. The scientist in me loves that there are competitors who are entering this field and investors who want to invest in emotion AI. With my CEO hat on, it's, you know, I obviously look out for competition and I want to make sure that we stay ahead.
Competition motivates you to continue innovating.
That's right. Exactly. Totally.
Can you share, like, from your perspective, what are the next big trends in emotion AI?
I mean, definitely there's a lot of industries that are starting to adopt that. So we are very focused on the automotive space around in-cabin sensing. So cars will have these camera and other types of sensors that will holistically understand the state of the driver. Is the driver tired, attentive, engaged, distracted, asleep, right? All of these states that put us, you know, impact safety, but also the other occupants in the car as well. Because that will allow the car manufacturers to personalize the riding experience, which is really important. So that's one area we're very focused on. Again, with COVID, we have all been catapulted into this universe where we work and we learn and we interact and communicate mostly virtually. So I feel like that's going to just create a whole new level of platforms and interest in emotion AI and people analytics and trying to understand and quantify, are these communications effective, right? So when you communicate with your team in this way, are you building loyalty? Are you building trust? Are you motivating people? When you and I have this video conversation and you put it out there, how are people responding to it, right? We don't know. You're gonna, like, hopefully there'll be lots and lots of people who watch this video. Wouldn't it be awesome to actually know which parts of the conversation people were like, ooh, that's interesting, or like, you know, I'm bored, right? So with our technology, you can quantify this moment by moment in an anonymous way and with people's consent, of course. But I think it's powerful data that's, yeah, applicable with online learning. Teachers can see the feedback of their students. Telehealth, which we're seeing a lot more of. Doctors and patients can connect and we can quantify things like empathy and other kind of emotional cues. So I'm excited. You know, obviously I do think that some aspects of this new norm is going to last beyond, you know, post-COVID. And I think we will see a lot more interest in emotion AI.
What about now, like, what should be the role of AI in general as we deal with the coronavirus pandemic?
I think AI can be really helpful, and we're already seeing amazing kind of applications of it. I'll just kind of call out my two favorites. One is to kind of combine the disparate data sources and our data profiles, right? To come up with unique insights or patterns around coronavirus hotspots or ways to preempt outbreaks and things like that. So I think that's really powerful, using this data to make predictive analytics. The other, I saw this in the news. I don't think it's widely applied, but imagine if we had emotionally intelligent social robots that could do some of the work that the health workers, the frontline health workers do. So imagine, you know, if you go into a hospital, the first thing you see, unless it's a critical case, is a social robot. And the social robot can make you feel better, but also test you and diagnose you. And then if you really need to see a human physician or a nurse, then you get escalated to a human. And it would just alleviate a lot of the safety risks, and also just the sheer amount of volume from the human, you know, from the health workers that are on the front line right now. So I thought that was a pretty cool use case.
I also came across these social robots on the news, and yeah, I find them totally amazing. It's,
Yeah,
I think one of the greatest use cases of robotics right now.
definitely. Agreed. Yeah.
In our audience, we have quite a few people that are really deeply interested in big data, deep learning, and all that stuff. Can you maybe provide us with a dive into the algorithms behind Effectiva? Like,
Yeah.
how do you even model such a complex problem, like sensing human emotions?
Yes. So the base of the technology is that you know, we have about 45 facial muscles, and that when they move, they create different expressions, and these different expressions have different meanings depending on a whole bunch of factors, like the dynamics of the signal and what other contextual cues are there, etc. So we have collected over 5 billion facial frames from 90 countries around the world of people kind of expressing themselves. So we use that data set and deep learning algorithms like convolutional neural networks or recurring neural networks for your techies out there, to basically train these models to recognize a variety of different facial expressions. When we first started, the system could only, or we had algorithms for only like 3 or so expressions, like a smile, a brow furrow, an eyebrow raise. And now we have a repertoire of over 25 of these different states, right? We can do a smirk or a squint or, a nose wrinkle, and we can map it to things like, how drowsy are you? Are you like moderately drowsy, or are you like falling asleep? How excited are you? How confused are you? So we are continuously adding more and more states to the system, which I find really exciting. There's a lot more to do, but it's basically a combination of huge amounts of data that has to be diverse, with kind of deep learning architectures that we innovate around.
What are the ethics around that? Like, for example, if uh, your car detects that you're tired, uh, you be able to start it at all, or like how would it all work?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And a lot of our work with our collaborations and our partnerships with the car companies revolves around that user experience, right? Like, we are the sensing engine, and we provide the sensor kind of input and output to the car manufacturers and designers, and they have to really think about, okay, what does the car do right now? There are systems out there where if you close your eyes for a certain number of seconds, a coffee cup will show up on your dashboard asking you to, or recommending that you maybe stop and go for a coffee break. Most people ignore that, right? I think there's kind of a spectrum of things the car can do, starting with a very kind of benign suggestion all the way to, I mean, if it's a semi-autonomous vehicle like a Tesla, it can say, I'm going to be a better driver right now than you are. I'm taking control of this car, right? Or yeah. So there's kind of an escalation of things the car can do to keep you safe. And it's important to design it in a human-centric way where the driver and the occupants are, they appreciate the design or the actions.
Talking about different options, and I watched your fireside chat with Anna Radulski the other day, and she said something along the lines that you're always looking for the next opportunity. Like, what's the biggest opportunity you see at the moment for yourself, but maybe also for society?
The biggest opportunity for myself, I would say, I mean, obviously, I'm very focused on the company and ensuring that we bring our technology out to the world, continue to do that. There's so much to be built and so much to be deployed. So I want to ensure that we're forging ahead with that in an ethical way. Ethics is a really big focus for me. And then, of course, getting the book out there. And I love that, I was supposed to be doing a back-to-back book tour in the US, and then through March, April, and May, and ending with a UK book tour. I'm disappointed that this hasn't happened, obviously, because of coronavirus. But at the same time, I'm doing a lot more virtual events, and I'm reaching so many more people. I would have never, right, like interviewed with you and reached this audience in Europe and beyond. So I just feel like I'm excited to get the book out there and make sure that it's reaching younger audiences and maybe audiences I wouldn't have gotten in front of if it weren't for the state of the world we're in. So I'm grateful for that. For society, I don't know. I really think that this was almost like a wake-up call, right? For the world, for our communities, for us individually. I personally feel like I was go, 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 go. And I now this is causing me to really stop and think and reflect and really decide what matters to me and to my family and to my community and to the world. So I think a lot of good is going to come out of this. And we have an opportunity the other thing is this is such a global pandemic. I tell my kids, like, can you imagine, like, the whole world is going through the same thing? And that just creates so much empathy, which we really needed in this world, because everything had become so polarized everywhere, right? And maybe this is a moment where we all come together and yeah, I think it just brings us closer as a humanity. So I mean, I'm hopeful about that.
And you also be joining the Women Tech Conference in June.
Yep.
Can you maybe tease us about your mission at that virtual summit? Like, in general, what would you say to women who are considering to work in tech?
As you would expect, I'm especially passionate about kind of diversity and inclusion in technology. Definitely around gender, bringing more females and women into technology, but not just women, diversity in general, other ethnic groups and minority groups, but also age groups, right? Like bringing younger people into the conversation. So I'm very excited about that conference in June, because I think it's an audience that I have a special sweet spot for. And I again, just hope that in sharing my story very openly and very honestly, and sharing some of these moments in my life that I had to overcome obstacles, or I had to overcome self-doubt, or I had to kind of, do something that defied what people expected of me. I hope that gives all the women in the audience some ammo to go crush it too.
One maybe final question. If you get a time machine and could go back and change one thing in your life, what would that be?
Oh my God, that's like a really hard question. When I started Factiva 10 years ago, I think of Factiva as my third kid. It's just all consuming. I think of the company all the time. I find it really hard to switch off over in the evenings or on weekends. I'm just always thinking about the company. And in the early days of my journey and of starting the company, I didn't make time for anything else. And I think it cost me, it just really affected my family at the time. I mean, I'm now a single mom, I'm divorced, and I look back and there were years, a stretch of several years where every vacation we would go on, I would just be on a conference call the whole time. And my kids would be playing outside with my dad and husband, and I would just be on back-to-back calls. So I never created boundaries, and I never created time to take care of myself. And I just now remind other founders that it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So pace yourself accordingly. So that would be one thing I'd change. I would pace myself differently.
I think this is a truly great advice. And thank you so much for this interview. I hope you sell millions of books. We'll add a link in the comments. And yeah, stay healthy, keep innovating yourself and the emotion AI industry.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.